We now return to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Kazuma Sogi. I know you, and I know you wouldn't lie, but still, there's no doubt that you're holding something back. You know more than you're saying, and you're gonna pull it out at the last minute because this is how every one of these things goes. During the past 30 minutes while this court was adjourned, all possible efforts were expended. But sadly, Mr. Jigoku's whereabouts could not be ascertained. We must accept the unfortunate conclusion that the Reaper has already done the deed. There's no sense in wasting any more of the court's time. The prosecution calls for an immediate verdict. You guys are overreacting. No, the trial cannot end now. You're a Japanese man, Ryunosuke. You should know when to lay down your sword. And you should know never to presume when the battle is won. The court has already been presented with all the evidence and heard all relevant testimony, and there can be only one conclusion. The accused is guilty. All relevant testimony? Far from it. There's still a crucial witness, from whom the court has yet to hear a single word of testimony. In that case, call your witness to the stand at once, counsel. Yes, my lord. Tomorrow, if possible. The witness is already on his way, and scheduled to arrive tomorrow. Who on earth is this crucial witness? Seishiro Jigoku, the very man allegedly murdered by the Reaper. Judge Jigoku, you found him? But the investigations of every policing resource in the capital suggest that Jigoku is already dead. How in the name of God did you find the man? He was located in France during the recess, at the port of Dunkirk. Thanks to one of Mr. Herlock Sholmes's famous deductions. Herlock Sholmes. Inspector Gregson almost certainly met with Mr. Jigoku on the night of his death, because along with Prosecutor Asogi, Gregson was on a mission to assassinate the man. Which means that Seishiro Jigoku is the sole witness, who can clarify exactly what happened aboard the SS Grouse on the 31st of October. No, it would appear that it's too soon to move to adjudication at this point. The prosecution concurs. The court must hear Mr. Jigoku's testimony. No judgment shall be passed until all testimony has been considered. In that case, I hereby call the end of today's proceedings. Court will reconvene at the same hour tomorrow. No objections from either side? No, my lord. No objections, my lord. We live to fight another day, by the skin of our teeth. Now it ends. The unexpected halt of proceedings sent a clamor around the courtroom, but outside the Bailey, where Londoners knew nothing of the secret trial within, it was a typical still night. Then, at a little past 8 o'clock that evening, Mr. Sholmes and his partner returned to Baker Street. We have returned, my dear fellows. Welcome back to Britain, and thank you for your timely help. Think nothing of it. I believe you had an even more wearing day than Mikotoba and I know. You could say that. We were on the brink of defeat in court earlier. So this prosecutor, Asogi, had you on the ropes, did he? And he's your best friend, you say? Well, he's not really the man I knew in Japan anymore. Kazuma's changed. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. I mean, it's incredible. To think that he'd even entertain the idea of acting as the Reaper's assassin. Well, nevertheless, you must introduce me. After all, I've only ever met the young man as a corpse. When all this started, almost a year ago now, Mr. Sholmes still hasn't told us the truth about what really happened back then, about the motivation for what he himself described as a great detective's lie. Now then, I must say, it's really quite a journey all the way to France. Well, it is another country, Mr. Sholmes, so what news of Judge Chigoku? We took him to Scotland Yard. The investigating detectives there have a lot of questions for the man. Poor Professor Mikotoba, this must be quite a shock for him. Ah, yes, I picked up this telegraph office. I picked this up at the telegraph office on our way home. What is it? Surely you haven't forgotten already. I put upon you for the matter only yesterday. You put upon me, Sholmes. I had to fill out your telegram to Japan and foot the bill as well. Oh, you had a reply already? What was so urgent, though, Mr. Sholmes? Such matters can wait until later. I'm far too hungry for an involved conversation at present. Well, that's good news, because supper's ready, everyone. Ah, and what a feast it is. If I were none the wiser, I'd think the trial were won already. Do we not have a dining room? Roast beef, kippers, stew, steak and kidney pie, Yorkshire pudding. Tomorrow could be a very long day, so eat up. In that case, I think I'll seat myself just here. This place appears to be the only one set with a helping of pheasant as well. Oh, sorry, Hurley, not there. Why ever not? Are we in set places this evening? Yes, and that place is for Susie's daddy. For me? That's right. I made it especially for you, Professor Mickey. I see. Well, that's terribly kind of you. It's a shame, really. What do you mean? Well, for a brief moment I believed it. That Susie and I were half-sisters, I mean. Iris, do you mean... Yes, I know now. I overheard yesterday. I secretly listened in to the conversation you had after I tricked you all into thinking I'd left. This doesn't surprise me whatsoever. The misunderstanding arose because of that autopsy report from 10 years ago, but actually, it turned out that neither Dr. Wilson nor Professor Mikotoba are Iris's father. Yes, about that, Iris. You know, I know, you can't tell me at the moment. Oh, Iris. The two-word interjections that she constantly puts in the pheasant is by way of an apology. I'm sorry for eavesdropping. Oh, no, that's quite all right. Then why don't I get an apologetic pheasant? Just who is Iris's father? Either it's the Professor or the Reaper, right? It's gotta be. I suppose that's not something we'll be finding out today. So then, let us dine, while our largely pheasantless plates are still piping hot. A fine idea, Sholmes. It all looks absolutely delicious. Eat as much as you like. There are always seconds. This could be our last chance to ask questions before tomorrow's trial. About that telegram from Japan and about Kazuma. I can't let this opportunity slip away. Okay, I can only do this. Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? Surely it's abundantly clear that I wasn't brooding over Mikotoba's refusal to share his pheasant with me. Nevertheless, I felt the need to withdraw from the social circle for a while and look on with hungry eyes. Sorry, Harvey, but I cooked that pheasant especially for Susie's daddy. Even though I've played the role of father to you for far longer. Mr. Sholmes, could I discuss some things with you? Certainly, my dear fellow. I find myself quite in the mood for a spell of conversation. No doubt you're hungry to learn more of my deep love of the game. I can probably contain my curiosity on that one. You needn't look at me in that fashion. In what fashion? It seems that before we discuss the pheasant, we have some rather unpheasant matters to discuss. So, what was in the telegram you received back from Japan then? Ah, this. I thank my lucky stars it arrived in time. Record found as indicated. Duplicate follows. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson. What? Those 4 names. We've come across that exact same list before. They came up in that unforgettable case last spring. What appeared to be a simple case of aggravated murder turned out to be masking monumental intrigue. A plot that involved the sale of British governmental secrets to foreign states. I knew it! I knew this whole thing was connected. And where's Mr. Russian? In exposing the means by which those secrets were being leaked, we deciphered a fragment of a message. Asogi, Ishin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson, but we didn't find the names out until the case was over, and we never did get to the bottom of what they meant. All we knew was that the information had been sent by somebody in the British government to somebody in Japan. So, why are the names coming up again now? Yes, where did the sender of your telegram discover them, Mr. Sholmes? I have here the message I had wired yesterday. Allow me to read it to you. Enter Judge Jigoku's office undetected and investigate telegram records. Expect to find communication from Britain dated 1 year ago. List of 4 names. Need by tomorrow. Naruhodo. I sent it to a detective I know who specializes in clandestine missions of this nature. You asked Inspector Hosonaga to... And I was... Where's he been this whole time? To undertake such an onerous task for you? And in my name? Wonder what guise he opted for this time. My dear fellows, it was a matter of great urgency, you understand. Anyway, the list of names was found in Seishiro's office, as Sholmes predicted. So you mean that mysterious collection of names that was sent from Britain to Japan was sent to Judge Jigoku? He was the intended recipient. I don't believe it. I do. But that doesn't answer the question of what the list of names actually signifies. I did formulate a hypothesis about that. But without a shred of evidence, I couldn't possibly have shared it. Mr. Sholmes looks deadly serious for once. The telegram from Japan has been entered into the record. Let's look at it. That's it. That's it. We never did inspect this closer. I don't see that we would need to. See these little things all over the place, don't you? Do you? It's the part on top of a pocket watch that you twist to set the time, isn't it? It's called the crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one. The crown? Like what sits on top of a monarch's head? It's a very grand name for such a tiny part. But actually... Yes, Mr. Naruhodo? If this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here somewhere with a very bare head. If by monarch you mean pocket watch, then I'm quite sure you have. don't suppose we can combine them. I don't know why we would want to. But, okay, so... yeah, that just goes there, and then the winding key is down... or not the winding key, the time set key goes into that. That tragedy we had to go through on the SS Burya, it was all for nothing. Kazuma wasn't even dead at all. We were completely taken in by the lie you told us, your great detective's lie. I took no pleasure in deceiving you. However, at the time, all that concerned me was preventing the young man's study tour from taking place, whatever the cost. What? I capitalized on the events that transpired to see that he was sent back to Japan. His remains, you mean? Precisely, Miss Susato. And then, I made sure that somebody else was sent to Britain in his stead. Why, you mean... The arrangement between our two countries was already in place. One university student lawyer and one judicial assistant to be accommodated on a study tour. In other words, by arranging for someone else to fill the place originally intended for Mr. Asogi, I would successfully prevent the man from arriving on our shores for several years at least. Oh wait, do you mean to say that it was all in aid of stopping Kazuma from coming to Britain? That's why you... Think back, Mr. Naruhodo. Was there not somebody who quite casually urged you to continue on the voyage to England? I don't remember your voice, sir. It's been so damn long now. The terms of this study tour were negotiated by the Department of Justice in both Great Britain and Japan. In the light of Mr. Asogi's unfortunate death, I'm afraid the study tour can no longer go ahead. You weren't wearing that at the time, but neither was Susato, so... My dear fellows, the majority of problems have an extremely simple solution, you know. All you require is one lawyer, and the study tour can continue, surely. But there is no one else with the necessary qualifications, Mr. Sholmes. We know of no other lawyer. The voyage to London still promises a good month of time. Ample opportunity, I would say, to find yourselves another suitable lawyer. I'm still amazed that he felt he could learn enough of Britain's laws just to be a lawyer in a month. So, you manipulated me? I've often remarked on the extraordinary lengths to which friendship will drive a man. I was quite sure that you would rise to the challenge for your late friend. I don't believe it. But if it was all contrived, I mean, what happened was treated by the authorities as murder. A woman was mistakenly arrested as the perpetrator. What do you suppose became of her? Naturally, I didn't allow the misapprehension to have any serious repercussions. I subsequently explained everything and assisted the unfortunate soul to finding the foreign refuge she sought. I seem to remember Miss Susato and I had some rather strong words for her. Well, she was certainly not devoid of all guilt. She deserved every word, I'm sure. I wonder if she made it to America then. I'm afraid I simply cannot comprehend it. Why would you go to such lengths, Mr. Sholmes? Why were you so determined to stop Kazuma-sama from reaching Britain? The truth is, 12 months ago, there was already a very tangible omen, the impending tragedy, you see. An omen that, at this very moment in time, is close at hand. An omen of all these tragic events that already existed a year ago is close at hand? We need to find out exactly what Mr. Sholmes knows. Okay. I guess then I'm supposed to present something to him. There was no room for doubt with your instructions in this telegram, Mr. Sholmes. You were very clear that it was Judge Jigoku's office that should be searched, so you obviously knew that's where the list of names would be found. Yes, we know. But we only learnt of those 4 names just over 6 months ago now, and only because they appeared as part of the top-secret government communications that were leaked. That's true, yes. But at the time you were unaware of the background. You see, those 4 names were wired to Japan. Around 6 months before that, approximately this time last year, in fact, we're both still in Japan. It really would be hypocrisy on my part to reprove others for intercepting state secrets, because after all, I'm perpetually eavesdropping on communications between the British and Japanese governments. You're perpetually doing what? How? Never mind the details, probably that gigantic contraption over there on the left on his desk. But you should know. No secret is safe from Herlock Sholmes, when he has designs on knowing it. Oh my, Mr. Sholmes, what a fabulous line! Now, 1 month after that list of 4 names was wired to the recipient Jigoku in Japan, Dr. John H. Wilson was murdered. As soon as I learned of the incident, a hypothesis rapidly took shape in my mind. As it turned out, I was partly correct, and partly mistaken. Nevertheless, it was the beginning of all the tragic events that were to follow. Mr. Sholmes, please, tell us all you know. Tell us about these 4 names and the tragedy to which they're all somehow connected. As I said, when I learnt of Dr. Wilson's murder in Japan, my mind immediately turned to those 4 names, because, you see, there was someone else on the list who I believed to be recently deceased. What? Who? Eishin, as it was transcribed in Japanese scripts. In actual fact, Miss Asashin. That was a familiar name to me. She was a professional killer, well known among London's unsavory classes. I see. She had completely vanished from existence several months before Wilson's murder. So I came to the logical conclusion that she had herself been killed, and accordingly I became fearful for the lives of the remaining 2 persons on the list. Keisugi and T. Gregson. Owing to our proximity, I decided to take measures to protect Gregson myself, but I determined it would be safest if young Isuki were to stay away from Britain. So that's why you went to such lengths to prevent his study tour from going ahead. Exactly. So, you already knew who Kazuma-sama was, Mr. Sholmes? Oh yes. Sholmes and I have exchanged correspondence for years. I'd recounted many tales about Isuki to him in my letters, and the news of Dr. Wilson's death, of course. Okay, but why was he so important to begin with? So, Dr. Wilson is dead then? I didn't know. Oh, Iris, I didn't know he... I know he wasn't my daddy, but still, that's very sad. Suppose. I'm so sorry, Iris. We knew the significance of the name, obviously, but... we just couldn't bring ourselves to tell you. Wasn't that mentioned in the conversation she supposedly overheard? What you just told us, Mr. Sholmes, doesn't completely tie in with the facts. There's one big hole in your hypothesis. Big hole, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes. You mean about Asashin, I presume. Oh, of course. Exactly. She wasn't killed, was she? She was in Japan posing as a visiting student under the assumed name of Giselle Brett. Glad you're keeping up, my dear fellow. But I only became aware of that fact 2 days ago, in the foyer of the Great Waterloo Hotel. Upon hearing that startling revelation, the hypothesis that I'd formed surrounding those 4 names was completely turned topsy. What? Topsy? What do you mean when you say your hypothesis was turned topsy, Mr. Sholmes? I believed all 4 names on the list to be names of victims. However, I was mistaken. Very much so. Asashin was a killer. So, this telegram is a list of both victims and killers, is it? Indeed. And it would seem that Miss Sheen was dispatched from Britain with the sole intention of dispatching Dr. Wilson, a visiting student status being merely a front. Which would of course explain why no motive could be determined for her actions. So the real reason Dr. Wilson was killed by Asashin is because he was the target of an assassination. And forearmed with that knowledge, fresh consideration of this telegram puts the list in a very different perspective. What do you mean? Oh, does it not strike you? There is another among the 4. Subsequently became a visiting student. Oh, wait, do you mean... But of course, a name you know only too well. You mean Kazuma? He did say in court earlier today... Yes, on the 31st of October, I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk in order to carry out a mission. And the mission was... the assassination of the Mark. Young Mr. Osogi accepted the mission a year ago now. Surely not. In conclusion, this document is a contract of sorts. An international agreement, one might say. Detailing an assassin exchange. An assassin exchange? How could Kazuma possibly have got involved in something like that? His father, no doubt. Let's assume that we have 2 parties, each wishing to dispose of a distinct individual. Those 2 parties then make a contract to swap their respective assassination targets. That would then be an assassin exchange. So, to begin with, the British assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Japan where she kills her target, and then the Japanese assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Britain in order to eliminate his target. It certainly does sound like an exchange. But what on earth is the point? Don't forget, Naruhodo, that the British assassin at least escaped conviction, thanks to diplomatic immunity afforded by consular jurisdiction. Oh yes. Such jurisdiction should be null and void under the terms of the new treaty between our 2 countries, so the fact that it was brought into play suggests intervention at the very highest levels. The highest levels? These murders were 2 sides of the same coin, linked not by a common motive, but by contractual agreement. As such, they appeared utterly unrelated. Yet, in truth, the assassins were complicit in one singular devilish scheme. That disassociation and the safeguard of diplomatic immunity were, I believe, the motivation behind the plot. But wait a minute, Holmes. If this telegram really is describing the exchange of assassins as you're suggesting, it would mean that the Japanese killer's target was never Seishiro Jigoku at all. It would mean Asogi's target was actually Inspector Gregson. What? Kazuma was here for Gregson? Judge Jigoku wasn't actually the Mark. Yes, that's exactly what it would mean. I held myself personally responsible for failing to keep the inspector safe. Mr. Sholmes. Again. Susato just loves saying everyone's name. I told him of my fears and implored him to seek a transfer to an overseas position. Obviously, with the young pickpocket in tow. Yes, Gina. Come to think of it, Inspector Gregson did mention that to us at the Great Exhibition, that he'd be transferring to the Paris police and taking Gina with him. But without informing me, he engaged in one last assignment, it seems. And sadly, it turned out to be his very last. It's too much to take in. All right, everyone, that's quite enough of all the serious talk for one day. Isn't it early? I mean, look at the time. Ah, quite right, Iris. We must conclude our preparations for tomorrow. What preparations? Well, I think I shall make my way back to my hotel room now. This has certainly been a night to remember. It is a little bit sad, though. I mean, I like the idea of you being my daddy. Because then Susie would have been my big sister. I'm sorry, Iris. I know, Iris. I was thinking quite the same thing. Were you? But if somebody like me would be worthy, I would be delighted to become your sister. What, really? Oh yes, without question. So, you'll teach me all the ways you know to throw Runo to the floor? Yes, of course. It would be my pleasure. Didn't have to agree quite so readily. Oh, but wait a minute. If Susie's going to be my big sister, you could be my big brother if you want, Runo. Huh? I mean, yes, of course. If you'll have me, I'll gladly be your brother. Well done, Iris. We must always be mindful of feelings. I've raised you so well. Because being sensitive is your strong suit, naturally. Right. I'm going to work extra hard for tomorrow now, because it's for my big brother and sister. What is all this talk about preparing for tomorrow? Preparing what? We'll just have to wait and see. Oh. Great. Or pulling rabbits out of hats in the middle of a trial. No pun intended, given though she gave me a rabbit earlier. Good luck in court tomorrow. I'm expecting a sterling performance. I'll do my very best, of course. I have no choice. The game won't continue if I don't. So the overnight break in the trial's proceedings became a crucial turning point, exposing new truths whilst posing new conundrums. That list of 4 names on the telegram in Judge Jigoku's office, and the extraordinary assassination plot in which my best friend had somehow become involved. I felt as though I had been plunged into an ever greater darkness, all of a sudden. But at the same time, I felt sure I would see the light again soon. They look slightly off-centered, and it's kind of bothering me, because I was lucky enough to have the most wonderful family in the world standing steadfastly behind me. Okay. We'll end this one here. I'll see you next time.